All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this session on talking about outreach to underserved communities. So my name is Sophia Huda. I'm the chair of the National Recycling Committee's Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. I also work on it with Gary Liss, who is here with us today as well. So this session is actually a follow-up to last year's session on DEI in the waste industry. And so last year we discussed the importance of why we need DEI in the industry, more diverse organizations. And one of the reasons why that's important is because, effective recycling programs require participation and buy-in from our communities. Every single member of our community, you have better participation, you get higher recycling rates, you have a better understanding of how to recycle, you get lower contamination and overall better programs. And in order to be able to get that participation from diverse communities, you need to be able to have people from diverse communities in your organization sort of strategizing on policies and programs like that. And so this session is on outreach to underserved communities. Each speaker might have their own definition of underserved community. For me, an underserved community is a community that is not typically being able to appreciate the benefits of environmental, policies in a city. They might, be a community that is generally maybe have less parks. Might be an environmental justice community, meaning that they're more exposed to pollution and environmental burdens. This might also include that they're minority communities, that speak languages and that are not used by municipalities to conduct outreach to them. And so today at this session this year, we want to give you strategies on how to reach those underserved communities. And we have a great set of panelists to help us discuss that and learn about some of their strategies. So first I'm going to introduce our panelists. I believe our third one is going to join us a little later. So I'm just going to start with Kesha and Berenice. So Berenice is the equity administrator at the city and county of Denver. She conducts outreach and collaboration with various community stakeholders to achieve environmental stewardship, social equity, and economic development goals. She's also the chair of the Latino Chamber of Commerce of Boulder County and has, through her work, has supported Latino businesses through the COVID-19 pandemic. Kesha is the director of community infrastructure programs at the Recycling Partnership and has over a decade of experience managing and coordinating municipal and institutional recycling programs. I guess we will start with Berenice. And Berenice, if you'd like to, if you have slides to share, please go ahead. But if you'd like to start and describe some of your work and how you've been able to reach out to underserved communities through your work.
Yeah, sure. I sent my slides, but I'm happy to share. Do I have a sharing rights?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So let me share my screen. How are you, everyone? I'm tuning from Colorado. Raise your hand. Well, not raise your hand, but put on the chat if you guys have been in Colorado. It would be nice to know. Okay. Let me share. Yes, perfect. Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna just talk to you and I'm gonna go very quickly to the slide because I want to give the opportunity to others to participate. And it's good to know. Oh, Anna, you live in Colorado. Perfect. Great, great. So we should connect. I will put my information at that. Okay. So let me minimize. So Sophia already mentioned some of the important concepts and important definitions about who are the communities that we serve and why we're serving them. And I'm just going to give you the definition that I use here in Denver. And frontline communities for us, we know that they experience first and the worst of the negative impacts of climate change, and they have been underrepresented and harmed by the system through the years. These communities include low to medium income groups, communities of colors, indigenous peoples, those who speak languages other than English at home, people with disabilities and chronic conditions, older adults, young children, people coming out from jail, the LGBTQ community, refugees, immigrants, and especially the undocumented people. Those are frontline communities for us. Underserved areas, and you can see this is a map of Denver. The places that look more dark orange are the underserved areas, and in Denver we call it the inverted L. And these areas, tend to have a high utility burden, high income stress, heat island, not many trees. Asthma rates are high because they are close to highways or pollution centers. And these areas also were subject to redlining in the past, and it's called the racial composition mainly by POC. So those important concepts we have to keep in mind when we want to engage them. And some of the common barriers that they face: language, as Sophia mentioned, how to navigate the system, how to process a license, how to ask, if they want to open a restaurant. It's not like back in their countries. Here you need a health inspection, a fire inspection. How they navigate that, right? They don't have trust in the governments, because back in our countries, the government just take the money for their pockets. So, and also immigration status, if they are undocumented, they cannot apply to our rebates, incentives, and programs. The digital divide. We saw that with COVID. Research is telling us that COVID jumped us into the future. We travel to the future, and now the digital divide is really highlighted in these communities. They were not working from home. They were the frontline workers. They were like cleaning hospitals, cleaning hotels, serving the food. So for them, they didn't jump into the future about technology like all of us. And then the lack of infrastructure to deploy that technology. We hear about these e-bikes. It's great. It works for some people, but for underserved communities, not too much, because we don't have the infrastructure in place for them to bike in their e-bike. And I will share this slides for you to read more on. And the COVID told us that we are interconnected, that there was inequitable access to resources, how fragile are our supply chains, and of course, the disparity for these communities I just mentioned to you, the sustainability setbacks. Because of the public health concerns, many people started to use again plastic and not doing the proper, zero waste initiatives that we started. And all of that gets horrible by climate change. And we saw that with the Marshall Fire that we had in Colorado last year. So COVID taught us a lesson that traditional engagement is not enough. Before any engagement, we need to build an equitable infrastructure to reach out to these communities. Translations are not enough. Having people that speak English is not enough. Spanish or other language is not enough. So you can do research, and you can look at the data I show you. You can visit the neighborhoods, but really you need to partner, especially in cities, in large cities like Denver, Chicago, LA. You cannot do door-to-door outreach. That would be ideal, but it doesn't work. So you need to partner with community-based organizations and economic partners as well, because they know the needs of the community. That's a strategy. And you need to put budget, because many people, you're asking the community to participate in your focus group, to fill out your surveys, to apply for the incentives. It takes time for them, time and resources. So make sure that you allocate a budget to do outreach to these communities, and build bilingual or multilingual culturally appropriate communications, and have staff. And you need to be, another strategy, flexible in that criteria, because sometimes we have, as I mentioned, undocumented people. They may not have a W-2 to prove they are a low income. And all of that, The most important thing is to build trust with these communities. And this is just, if you build these strategies, you have this infrastructure, you will be ready for a crisis or to promote a new program. And just a reminder that, yeah, we're doing equality, it's great, but we need to do equity. And not all the people may want an apple. Maybe they want an orange. And it's what they call a target universalism. When you help the people who need it the most, and I always have an example that works in my experience, when you help someone who lives in a mobile home, is a Latina single mom, when you design a program for that person, helping others becomes easier. But how? How to do it? And these are the strategies. It's not easy, friends. We have to do the hard work. Our sustainability offices have to do the hard work. And you can start with procurement opportunities. Why not opening the door to vendors from the community that can help you, to facilitate the services that you need, but also they can tell you and connect you where to address the program. And all of that build trust, meet the people where they are, have meaningful conversations, and be patient. If you go to the communities, don't expect that they will fill out your survey right away or you apply for your program. You need to talk about family, about the neighborhood. Building this trust takes time. And that's why we need to be patient. And of course, open-minded, flexible. We need to use non-traditional channels. They won't fill out our surveys. They won't reply our emails. They use texting. They may not have computers, but I'm telling you, everyone has a smartphone. So you need to be flexible and open-minded that sometimes you need to send information, an application form through text, and that's okay. And use, in COVID, we took advantage of all the economic and community strategies out there that businesses, in this case, they needed, PPP loans, they needed grants to keep, afloat with COVID. So we use like, how I will help you to fill out a grant, a PPP loan. And after that, you build trust and you were able to talk to them about the environmental footprint, why sustainability is important, why recycling, why composting. So how my policy, how my program can address their basic needs. This is just an example of all the 60 Latino businesses that we help applying for grants, PPP loans, and during COVID. And out of those 60, 21 became part of the Sustainable Business Program, and they got certified. They changed LED lighting, refrigerators. They started composting, recycling. But we first helped them with their basic needs at that moment. So, and adapting this system, adapting the way for them to participate is not bending the rules, and you need to be clear with your internal staff, because sometimes they tell me, Bernice, you're breaking the rules. Like, no, I'm accommodating the system for these people to participate. Again, flexible in the protocols, the criteria. And something that I have learned through my experience is that BIPOC, they tend to box us like low income, they are poor, they are not interested in solar panels, in EVs, what shall we invest? But no, there are BIPOC that are medium to high income, and they are ready to put solar panels in their house, to drive an EV. But I believe we're not making marketing that is appealable for them, that I connected. Like how many times we see a Latino man driving a Tesla in the marketing? We don't. So we need to be conscious about that. And also metrics. Metrics are important for us. So we need to look at the qualitative metrics. They should be also as important as the quantitative. These are some examples of the marketing that we have done, and also diversify your staff. Is an asset, and that builds in the future workforce. I put a picture of Astrid. She started with us volunteering, and she has a very basic idea about what she wanted to do for life. And after being engaged in the sustainability world, so now she wants to be an environmental lawyer, and that's great. And also to have BIPOC at management level. That's very important, because if they see that you are the jefe, that you are the boss, the community wants you to succeed, so they will participate and they will help you to succeed, and you will get great outcomes. So we need to have these bilingual advisor mentors, and that they know how the system works, but they also understand the needs of the community, because they not only speak the language, but they relate to the culture. So the formula: connect to CBOs, economic partners, utilities, the people that you want to do to implement the program. I'm not going to play the video because I want to give the chance to other speakers to present their slides, but I will share with you these slides. But this, I just want to give quickly this example about this Taco Star. We helped them apply for grants, and after that they changed refrigerators, toilets, they started to compost and recycle, put e-bikes. They even won an EPA award for all those efforts, and it was great. And for recycling opportunities, since we're in a recycling event, how we can make the recycling accessible to these communities, because in Denver, many of our underserved communities, they live in multifamily. And multifamily nowadays don't allow for compost or recycling. So how we work with multifamily property owners to make it happen, because they want to do it, but if they don't have this infrastructure, even if you promote in English, Spanish, Vietnamese, they won't be able to participate unless there is infrastructure for them. Again, the marketing in Mexico, you can see this bag. We go to our supermarkets and take these reusable bags. So we have that knowledge from our countries, but we come to this country and the plastic bags are so accessible to us. So maybe using the marketing about this bag that we use in Mexico in our recycling programs can work. And again, how recycling can help the bottom line of our communities we want to outreach. Capacity building. And I mentioned this last time, like our trash pickup drivers, they could be a great ambassadors, and maybe you are going to diversify your workforce because they know the trash. They know what is recyclable, what is compostable, what is landfill. They all know of that. So how we can build capacity with them that they can be the program managers at some point. And then equitable incentives also look at you want to reduce waste, so maybe if you work with the utilities, you can create an incentive for dishwasher that restaurants can use instead of they keep buying the styrofoam. And of course, build knowledge with the community. And sometimes they say, oh, we don't have budget, but there is workforce development, and there is a lot of money coming from federal, state, and local government about workforce. So you can tap into that to create internships for people to learn, students, and then you diversify your workforce. This is some of the marketing I'm using in Denver to talk to tenants about our building performance ordinance. The commercial buildings above 25,000 square feet in Denver, they need to reduce their energy consumption. And yeah, we talk to property managers, but we're also talking to the tenants because we want to make sure that these improvements, the owners don't pass the cost to tenants. And this is an example of the marketing that we're using. So takeaways, COVID, after COVID is forcing businesses, organizations to act more responsible in the long term. We can be assets to these underrepresented communities, because I believe myself that climate action investments or sustainability investments are economic development investments. And if we target the right investments in areas that really need it, we can address many socioeconomic stresses, such as homeless, mental health, other issues. Partnerships are key. We should not work in silos. Community-based organizations are our great asset to work with. And in crisis, the local leaders can be great ambassadors, so we just need to identify them and compensate them for their time. Because I always say that local government pays a lot to consultants, and to communities, they just say thank you or give a gift card, but they are experts in the community, so we should compensate in the same way. Diversify staff, the equity formula, and I believe if we do these steps right now, we're going to build a legacy that can change how this country will look in the future. And thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Berenice. That was great. We do have some questions, but I'm gonna let Kesha go first, and then we'll look at some of the questions that have already been entered into the chat. And please do put any of your questions or comments in the chat for the panelists, and we'll address them after this next presentation. So Kesha, it's all yours.
Oh, okay, finally unmute. Hi. Oh, so I'll make a quick correction. It's actually Keisha.
Sorry,
Keisha's
I kept thinking it might be that. Yes, sorry.
That's okay. I'm not as cool as her. I don't dance or sing as great. Let me go ahead and get my screen share up. Oh, I don't have the ability to do that just yet. Let's see. Sophie, are you able to give me permission for screen sharing? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Sorry, all bear with me. Technical difficulties on our early Friday here. Okay, so. Give me a thumbs up if you're seeing the presentation.
I can, yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay.
And I'm going to actually turn off my CC. If the CC, the closed caption, bothers you, please go ahead and let me know. I'm happy to go ahead and turn it off as well too. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Keisha Burton. I'm a director of community infrastructure programs with the Recycling Partnership. And I'm really honored to be invited to speak today about equitable programs and outreach for BIPOC communities throughout the country. So first, I will start with just a quick introduction of who the partnership is. We are a 501c3, and so we're formed for the public good. We utilize funding and contributions from corporations to help drive system change from coast to coast. We started out with infrastructure grants, which I still manage as a part of the infrastructure team as well. But beyond that, we have expanded our offerings to better support the recycling system as a whole. And that includes optimizing the system to support improved capture and participation. And we work with other regional orgs and state entities to continue to help improve the system. We develop peer-to-peer networks that help us communicate or colleagues communicate across coast to coast and basically dig in with each other on problem solving, because we recognize that there are challenges for every community, every municipality, every state, and just being able to gain insight from others is really helpful. But we also are a research and data-driven org, and all of our research and data goes into the offerings that we provide to communities. It informs our grant making, our decision making around grant making, and informs the resources and the toolkits that we develop. And we do this routinely because we recognize that there are always going to be stressors and challenges and changes to the system, and we want to be able to meet those changes and help support all of the professionals that are working in this industry to continue to provide these quality services. So we have our support is intended to help communities have equitable access to recycling and therefore unlock new tons. We do that, or we're looking at doing that in very specific ways or funding ways. And the main funding way that we have is a Recycling Inclusion Fund. This fund is to support equitable access. So this funding will support our infrastructure programs and research as well. But we also have a Recycling Resiliency Fund, and that is to address communities that are at risk post-pandemic of either canceling their services or shutting down. And that is intended to be like a safe stopgap because they're addressing budgetary shortfalls. And then we also have, our small town access fund that we recently launched with L'Oreal, and that is to help meet the unique recycling challenges that small town communities or rural communities are faced when it comes to deploying recycling programs, or even just having seed funds to fund new access to recycling. And all of that is tied together through our MRF intervention, where we do have grant programs to support grants, improving the infrastructure, the equipment, and the systems at their MRF that allows them to expand what is accepted in their mix that they currently weren't taking, such as things like polypropylene or even PET, aluminum as well. So those are the 4 components that really drive our decision-making towards supporting communities and unlocking new tons. So digging deeper into our Recycling Inclusion Fund, again, the purpose of that fund is to address racial disparities across the country in the waste and recycling industry. It's intended to close the recycling equity gap, so all residents have access to resources and tools they need to live a more sustainable life and to participate and engage in their recycling program. So like it was said before, we know that community members, BIPOC communities want to participate, but we have to make sure that they have access to participate. And again, this work supports our diversity and equity inclusion pledge, which is we at the partnership, we are standing up and speaking out for equity and inclusion, and we're doing that in intentional ways of supporting the system, both from a funding and education end. So our Recycling Inclusion Fund takes a 3-pronged framework of deployment where we focus in on research, where we want to identify where people being underserved. And then through that research, we want to identify methods of improving that recycling equity within those communities. How do we make the system better? How do we make it work for BIPOC communities? And then through the infrastructure and education, that's really on our implementation. After we've gathered all this research and we have a clearer path forward, we need to execute on that. So we target infrastructure investments so that we can provide the service, close the gaps on participation and capture for BIPOC communities. And then we also want to develop around that all of the best management practices and all of the tools and resources that would be needed to continue sustaining those infrastructures. And as the previous presenter also mentioned, in terms of leadership within the actual industry as well, we need leadership we need people within the industry from the bottom all the way up to the leadership roles, right? To help support equitable access and communications and education for BIPOC communities or underserved communities. And we also do that through our partnership through our fellowship program. And so this program is, it's a way for us to build a pipeline of leadership talent within the industry. So our Inclusion Fund essentially works in these 3 spaces. For our infrastructure and education, we do this often through our granting opportunities. And our goal is to essentially reach and empower BIPOC communities with recycling access and all the educational tools and resources that they need to support their improvement. So something I wanted to touch on was like, across the country, we often hear or get an impression that recycling feels universal for everyone, but it's really important, especially when you are the one managing these programs, to not lean into assumptions that everyone knows that they have access to recycling or even that they are eligible for it. And then we don't want to make assumptions about why they may not be participating. We want to make all of our decision-making based around research and metrics. So it's really important to not make your decision-making based just solely on assumptions that you have around why certain demographics or segments of your community aren't participating. And then activating and maintaining visible and reliable infrastructure is the first step in really honing in on normalizing behavior at the household level. So that's going to tie into making sure that everyone has universal automatic access to recycling services and that they can engage with it in the most convenient way possible. And that also the education and the information that they're receiving is in a way that is able for them to really understand how to participate well within their program. So that goes a little bit beyond just simply translating material. And that goes into really looking at your communities and understanding that you need to have things that are really culturally specific in certain areas and making sure that you're building your education around that. And we know, we've done research that doing this does matter because recycling matters to all communities, regardless of race. we've done a consumer research, and one of the questions we asked was, what would make you want to recycle more? Like, what would stimulate that behavior in your household? So 74% of respondents said that having bin service free for all would definitely cause them to participate. But the next three highest ranked elements at 73% and 72% were having tangible information of what they can and can't recycle, and also having a container inside the home. So this is really integral for communities that are living in multifamily housing, because often they don't have a container inside the home. And this adds to their not wanting to participate, because it reduces the convenience of participating. But then they also want to know, like, where exactly do the items go and what do they become? So they want to learn more about the overall system from the start of putting it into their bin to the very end of what does it turn into. So our Recycling Inclusion Fund does have some criteria for the sake of making sure that there's enough time for everyone to speak. I won't go over this in great detail, but I'll just say our Inclusion Fund is based on the national average of total non-white population. So the total non-white population average is roughly 23.7%. And there's some qualifiers there for communities to apply within that spectrum that you could look at. And so, but I guess the takeaway I really want you to have in terms of the Inclusion Fund projects that we could fund is that we're focused on access, because we know that there are drop-offs. Sometimes we lean into drop-off programs as an element, but we want to make sure that the convenience is there, because when we're looking at drop-off programs without convenient access, only 4 to 8% of the segment of the population is likely to participate, meaning they'd be willing to drive to a drop-off. So we have to make sure we're also addressing convenience. These are examples of communities that we work with specifically on multifamily programs, because we've identified that the real gap in equity has been often in the multifamily side, where there isn't actual collection programs, or those who are living in multifamily are having to drive to a drop-off. And again, those options are always convenient or easily accessible, and the knowledge of their program is not often widely publicized throughout the entire community. So San Diego, California, we did a door-to-door bilingual outreach in which we deployed tote bags. So going back to where we were saying, it is important to have a container inside the home to address convenience of participation. So we distributed these tote bags to every single household. We used staff members that were bilingual, so that way they could address questions at the door for residents who are non-English speaking. And the reason we lean into this is there are huge segments of the population within this community that English is their second language, right? So the next spoken language, more spoken often at home, is like Spanish or Tagalog or Vietnamese. So once we distributed those tote bags with their outreach material, we then do a contamination program for these communities, where we do some visual audits on their containers, on their dumpsters, and we gauge what is the contamination prior to deploying an outreach program for these particular properties, and then what is the outcome after we've deployed them. And so we found that there was there wasn't a significant increase in capture in San Diego in particular, but what we did find was that there was a larger presence of corrugated cardboard. So there could present some seasonality impacts with multifamilies that we should look at. But we also saw something that was unexpected, which was the positive boost in the image of the city by the residents in these communities. They came out with a much higher favorable look for their city as a governance, because they felt validated and seen, and they really liked that they had someone who was willing to come to their door and engage with them in the language that is native to them and made them most comfortable. So this is one highlight of a project. We also leaned into transcreational material through our work with Tacoma, Washington. And so this is going beyond just simply directly translating information. So in Tacoma, 18% of the residents speak another language other than English at home. And the most common non-English language spoken there were also Spanish, Vietnamese, but they also spoke Russian and Korean and Khmer. So we worked with the city to develop transcreational content that you can see here All of the materials that are depicted here are culturally specific materials. So things that the community would typically find or purchase within the community if there's culturally specific shopping needs, like if you're a Spanish speaker and you may shop at a bodega. There are certain cultural products that you could relate to if you could see it visually presented to you. So we've really leaned into transcreational content. And so what we did was distribute, again, totes to every multifamily resident that we were targeted within our measurement group or measurement area. And then for this particular project, we also wanted to have a tangible reduction of contamination occurrences. So we were hoping to reduce contamination, the number of contamination polls that the communities had or the target units had. We want to reduce that to less than 50 polls for the 4 to 6 week inspection period. Following the deployment of the containers, making it convenient for them to participate, but also giving them content in the way that they can digest it, we saw 0 polls during the entire measurement period, which is really good to see. But we also got really great feedback about where the gaps were in our content before transcreational. So we measured our focus group, and our focus group feedback was the previous content didn't work because direct translation just wasn't appropriate enough for them to really understand. And then the transcreational content was much better received. So it's really important here to note that the community engagement process really needs to lean into culturally relevant material. Spokane, Washington is another multifamily education project that we rolled out as well. We targeted 1,800 units there and did the same thing, deployed totes with info card and door hangers, so basically education suite, customized and developed that again for their community. And we were targeting making sure that we kept contamination low. And so this allowed for the community again to get the content that they needed, have easier access, something that allowed them to take their materials from their home to their actual collection unit or dumpster outside. And so what we found after we ran this program again was there was a significant decrease in contamination. I believe Spokane had an 81% relative reduction in their contamination once this project was rolled out. And then Orlando, Florida is the final one. They actually presented on the previous multifamily session prior to this. So, but we also work with them as well too. We actually executed 2 grants with the city of Orlando, which is really great to work with. And in Orlando, same scenario, deployment of in-unit apartment bins and totes. And this is also education. These grants were to support Orlando's multifamily, or at least their mandatory recycling ordinance. Now, their ordinance, you would think it requires that all multifamily and commercial businesses to recycle, but the language is more so written to imply it's meant to provide the opportunity to recycle. And their approach is to focus in 3 areas. Participants for multifamily commercial have to provide containers, and they should provide consistent ongoing service, and then they are to provide a recycling verification form to the city. So again, this is a really good method of trying to get and ensure that multifamily underserved communities are getting the equitable access, universal access to recycle, because we can't just leave it to drop off, because as I said before, only about 4 to 8% of the population will actually drive to a drop off. So this is a good way of supporting that. So the results of deploying these apartment bins in the education, at least on the first grant, is there's 1,000 tons of recycling capacity that was added weekly. We distributed 3,500 totes to units in the city. And there was, I believe, 3,000 property-specific informational mailers that were also distributed. So in all, there were about 25,000 units that gained recycling access. And I believe that's actually the last case study here. But the real tie-in that I wanted to leave off on is when we're working to provide equity and equitable access to services, again, it has to be universal. Everyone should have access to quality recycling. The service has to be consistent. because that's where we build trust. If the service is inconsistent and there's no access, then there is no trust in the actual system for residents to participate in. And we have to communicate where the community needs it the most. So we have to move beyond just communicating in English, and we have to think beyond just simply translating, but making things culturally relevant and specific as well. And I have my final slide, which is just my title card here, if anyone had any questions, but I know we're going to hold to the end as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Keisha. That was great. I think a lot of the audience really appreciated the posters and the messaging and the work that you're doing. And we will discuss more afterwards, but we have our third panelist, Grisela, who's able to finally join us. So Grisela Latore is an assistant professor at Ohio State University. She specializes in modern and contemporary US, Latino, and Latin American art. And she teaches classes on Latina Chicana feminism, visual culture, and art. So we're very happy to have her here. And Grisela, I'll leave it to you. I believe you can share your screen if you have any slides.
Thank you, Sophia, and thank you, everyone. And I apologize for my lateness. Schedules are always difficult. Busy schedules are always difficult to kind of juggle. So I am going to share my screen. So host. Oh, could I? It says host disabled participant screen sharing. Is it possible that I could be made into a co-host so I can share?
Yep. Or Congress manager will do that just right now.
Okay.
In the meantime, Keisha, someone had a question for you. I don't know if you mentioned it, where you're located.
I am located in Mebane, North Carolina, which is roughly in the triad, so close to Chapel Hill and Greensboro, North Carolina.
Okay, great, thank you.
Unfortunately, I'm unable to share my screen. Do apologize for this. So I'm trained in the arts, and we don't feel confident saying anything without images that accompany us. So
hold on.
Thank you.
I apologize, Grisela. I think our Congress manager, she had to step out. I don't think you sent me your slides. Did you? If you do, I can maybe share them for you. In the meantime, maybe we'll address some questions. And if you can send me your slides, I'll just put your email, my email in there. So we did have a few questions in the chat. First one was one question for if Keisha or Berenice could explain more about culturally appropriate messaging and design and what that means and why it's important. And for Keisha, I also had a question about the posters that you did, the transcreational posters, is that it?
Yes, transcreational.
Transcreationals, yeah. So if Berenice or you want to elaborate on their importance, and then I had a question on the time and research it took into making those.
So I'll say that the importance of culturally specific is we're a diverse country, and products are different across the country in different regions, different communities that you go in. And I'll say that, as speaking for myself, I'm actually first generation American, and growing up, I move between both worlds. So I would go to maybe a major supermarket, but I would also go to the bodega in my neighborhood as well too. And it's very common to have products that are not often in your major supermarket. And for my grandparents in particular, they would relate to those images more than say just a Cheerios box, cereal box. Like they need to see visually that tie-in of what they purchase at the stores they frequent that actually goes in the recycling. And then language as well too. This gets a little tricky. So transcreational can be expensive, but like when you're communicating in other languages, it's also important to understand that there are variances in idioms. Is that how you pronounce it? But we speak the same language per se, but we speak it in different ways. And so there are different references that have to be made when we are speaking in specific communities. Most recently, I've lived in New Mexico, and I'll say that Spanish spoken in New Mexico and various parts of New Mexico are vastly different than what you're going to hear in, say, Southern Texas, East Texas, or even in South Florida. And you should be aware of that and create your communications around that a bit. But I think Bernice might have feedback on that too.
No, I think you have really answered very well. The only additional thing that I will add is when they see like the opposite of Cheerios cereal, they feel identified and they want to learn more. It's like, oh, it's something that is appealing to me. It's like calling me. It's like I know that, like for the COVID vaccination clinic where we did, it was not in our scope, but we needed to do it, and we were able to promote sustainability initiatives. We put a wrestler, fighting the virus, and that is, it's culturally appropriate. They feel like, oh, okay, es un luchador. I want to go there. I want to learn. And thanks to that culturally appropriated marketing, we got a lot of people getting the vaccine and getting to know about sustainability. So I was so happy that we were able to provide vaccine and sustainability materials to thousands undocumented Latinos when it was very hard to get a vaccine for them.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Grisela, we are still having problems with giving you screen sharing. Again, if you want to send me your slides, otherwise, are you able to present without your slides? I know that's very rude to ask an art teacher, but very, very rude. I apologize profusely, but if you're able to do it, then that would be great.
So, Sophia, I will stop. If you remove me as a co-host, maybe that will help, because maybe you can only have certain amount of co-host people.
No, I actually have no capability to make anyone a host or co-host. That was the Congress manager, but we're having a bit of difficulty with that. Hosting
Okay.
capabilities were handed over to someone else for some reason. So yeah, if Grisela, if you're able to, or if you send me your slides, I can take care of that.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah, unfortunately, thank you, Sophia, and thank you everybody for being here. Unfortunately, my slides were too big, so I wasn't able to send them over email. And so I'll just speak without my slides. Just imagine some beautiful, colorful slides alongside my my presentation. So I am not a specialist in recycling or waste management, but I am here to talk about outreach, which I think is something that is important has been important and addressed by my fellow panelists. And so I would like to share a project that I've been participating in, and it's a project that involves outreach to an underserved community. And so I'm here located at the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. And to me, an underserved community is one that lacks the proper resources and opportunities for them to succeed, and one that is negatively affected by inequality. And so the community that that I'm working with is called Linden, which is a predominantly African-American neighborhood here in Columbus, Ohio. And what we're doing is we're working with the community to create murals. Oh, I can share my screen now. Yes, all right. Thank you. All right. Now I feel more supported. Okay. And so, you know, I believe that outreach in these communities is crucial because the services and support that they need is sorely lacking. And I also see outreach as a component of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And at Ohio State, a lot of times, or at universities, we're not used to doing outreach. We're very much kind of like so comfortable within our ivory tower. But I decided that because of the work and the research that I've been doing, that it was time for me to start doing some outreach. And so I started participating in this project called Linden Murals of Empowerment, which is a collaborative community outreach project that is creating murals in Linden, in this predominantly African-American neighborhood that is negatively affected by structural racism. And as you can see from our team members, we are a very diverse group that includes artists, it includes photographers, it includes also folks who are experts on the Linden community. We have 2 researchers, which is myself and Professor Jerry Kogoto. And we are also working with a social media intern. And so through, though Linden is indeed an underserved community, it is also a neighborhood that is teeming with community resources and neighborly culture, riches that we have been capitalizing on since the inception of Linden Murals of Empowerment. So our focus on the project is young people, for we believe that the power of public art to uplift we believe in the power of public art to uplift and inspire them. And we also believe in facilitating conversations with the community before painting any neighborhood walls. So we refuse to operate in a top-down fashion where we impose our vision upon Linden. Our role then is to facilitate the conditions for the community to project their voice in a public way and to focus the creative energy of young people toward the common goal of empowerment. So in the process, we have learned to allow the community, in particular young people, to teach us what true collective and collaborative action looks like. And so I want to share a few pictures of the work that we have been doing. Let's see. And we opened Linden Murals of Empowerment with a community conversation. And this community conversation consisted of us engaging the community. We did this in Linden itself, in one of the local churches, places of worship. And we opened our project with some poetry reading by Ani Mwalimu, who's a local poet and activist. We also had a small session on implicit bias led by Karen Clark, who talked about, what is implicit bias and how is Linden as a community affected by implicit bias, because there's a perception that nothing good happens in Linden, that Linden is only defined by poverty and by crime. And so there is also that implicit bias that is happening when it comes to Linden. And so we had some wonderful conversations with the community. And for me, outreach is about listening to the community and not coming in with this idea that you know what's best for a particular community, especially because a lot of us on the project are not from Linden. We haven't lived those realities. And so it was really important. And we had this wonderful group of young ladies, as you can see here, who really schooled us on, what it means to do community work and what are the needs of the local community in Linden. And so that was a really wonderful opening to our project. We continued then with artist workshops where young people came in and started drawing their ideas for a better Linden. And we started working with their vision of how they imagine a Linden that is more empowered. But also we asked them to talk about what is good about Linden, what are the positive things about Linden. And so that was an incredibly enriching experience. And I know that we're probably short on time, so I will wrap up, soon. And so we also did activities such as this, and I call this the whiteboard pedagogy, where we ask young people to define Linden, and both the good and the bad, and maybe the ambivalent. And so they created this series of responses, that Linden is strong, that Linden that Linden is diverse, and there's love in Linden. But they also talked about the poverty. They also talked about the gun violence, the littering, the fact that Linden doesn't have the same services, city services that more affluent communities have. And so, so there is that issue that young people responded to. And then we started seeing some incredible artwork by these young people that are ranging from elementary to high school. This really powerful image of this hand stopping gun violence with a bouquet of flowers. And this is the artwork that was coming out of the hearts and minds of the young people. We continued with a second workshop where we began talking about mural ideas and what are some important mural ideas that the young people would like to see on the murals that we create. And this is also part of the community engagement, the community outreach, is to have these conversations before we actually do put anything on the walls of the community. And here we see two of our artists in our team, Shelby Toon and Joel Cross, assisting a lot of the young people with their drawings and with their, and with their images. And I'd like to share some of the youth artwork because I'm so proud of the artwork that they did. And I think one of my favorite pieces is this piece by a young woman, a young lady who talked about her relationship to music and how music gives her a kind of respite, a kind of haven away from hurtful language, away from negative feelings. And for me, this was really powerful because music is also art. And so this student, this young woman was tapping into this idea that art can uplift, that art can empower and can heal also, because I think healing is also an important part of what we're trying to do in Linden. And this is an impromptu whiteboard mural that Joel Cross did, one of our artists, and he used all of these ideas from students and put them into images for what could be a mural idea. And so our first outdoor mural was consisting of a mural prism. A mural prism is a freestanding structure where you create images on all three sides. And here you see the young people helping the artists create images about Linden. And then each side of the prism has the L, the M, and the E. And what does that mean for the young people? And then to wrap up is my final image, which is, see, this is actually a video. That's why I couldn't send this to you, Sophia. which is our first mural that we created on an actual wall. And this is a participative mural that included the contributions of young people. And so here you see young folks who are being led and instructed by Andrea Russell, one of our other team members. And here we see Andrea, who is also a commissioner in South Linden, North Linden, lead some of the young people in creating images of their own visions of what they would like to see in a mural. And then finally, this is the mural still needs a little work, but this is, the kind of the final result of the mural. And here you see the artist leaving space for the youth to bring in their own sense of creativity into this mural image. And so here we see this kind of collaboration between the artist and the community. And so with this, I thank you so much. And again, I apologize for being late. If there's time, I'd be happy to entertain questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grisela. The art is amazing. That's a beautiful mural. I think it's, it's really important. First of all, Andrea Russell is a member of the JEDI committee, and she was the one who suggested Grisela come as a speaker, and we're so happy because it's really important to understand that, as Grisela explained, that some underserved communities are also plagued, unfortunately, by violence and things like that. And it's important to remember that waste management comes from the city, the same city that is not helping them with their violence problems and their crime problems. And so being able to instill a sense of pride in your community is very important. And it's really important to target children as well, because, there's been a lot of programs that go with children, and it shows they bring these lessons back into their homes and are able to spread it to their parents and to their families and to the larger community. So thank you so much. And thank you to all our presenters. Now, we said we would go to about 4:10. So we have about 7 minutes for questions. So let me, my chat is filled with panicked messages over some of our tech issues. And I have to refer back to some of our questions before I can find them. So someone had a question earlier about, so someone asked about how do the panelists recommend working in areas where there's a large segment of the population that live in another state, country, or commute, basically. Keisha responded to that in the chat. That was a very interesting answer. I was wondering if you wanted to elaborate on that, or Berenice, if you had any suggestions about that yourself.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. How do you recommend working in areas where there's a large segment, a large transient population, so they might work in or live in a different state or country, especially, say with recycling rules and waste management rules, how to get the message from one part, from a population that lives somewhere else, but say disposes their waste in one part of, in another city.
Like they work remote?
Or they commute. Or they're often traveling for work.
Yeah, and that is very interesting, because we have cities here in Colorado like Boulder and Denver that many of our frontline workers, they don't live in Boulder or in Denver because affordable housing is an issue, and usually in the communities where they live is more affordable, but the sustainability infrastructure hasn't been developed, as in more, I hate to use this term, but more developed cities like Boulder and Denver, they have compost, recycling, and they have all these RTD like bus transit routes. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge, and I always try to tell my colleagues that we need to look at. Remember the picture I put you about the equity scheme, that we should include workers that maybe they might not live in Denver, but they work in Denver. So how we're making this programming accessible for them, because if they learn here, then they will go back home and teach their families. And I have an example of an HVAC contractor that he doesn't live in Denver, but we're opening the door and again, the procurement strategy, for him to install heat pumps in one of our pilots that we're going to do with electrification. Then he goes back to Longmont or Broomfield, I think it's Broomfield, where he lives, and he brings the knowledge to his family, neighbors, and now other contractors are reaching out and asking how they can collaborate. So I think the interconnection of things, again, addressing basic needs of the contractor, he needs job. And now, because we're addressing that basic needs, he's learning about sustainability, about heat pumps, about decreasing CO2 emissions. It's just, I don't know if my panelist colleagues have better strategies, but it's something I'm using and it's working. And for other states, and I haven't, to be honest, I don't have examples that usually my underserved communities, and please correct me if I'm mistaken, no, most of them work. They don't have the privilege to work remote like us.
Mhm. Thank you. That was interesting. So I would like to, because we had a lot of good questions, but I don't want to keep anyone past 4:10. So what I guess I think it's probably appropriate to probably wrap up this session now. So I really appreciate all our speakers. Those were very, very interesting presentations, some great strategies presented. And I would ask for any participants who have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to our speakers directly. There seems to be a wealth of information. I really enjoyed learning about your strategies. I wish we'd had more time to talk about them. But I appreciate everyone who attended, everyone who participated in the chat as well. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your Congress, which is ending today anyway. So enjoy your plenary session. And thank you for attending. I hope you found it informative and interesting. And thanks, Berenice, for putting your email in the chat. If the rest of the speakers want to as well, please do.
Sophia, I just want to say something very quickly. It's important to do this work because the demographics of this country are changing. And if we don't train our BIPOC young people, future generations, we're not going to be ready. And it's very important, the workforce piece. Thank you for putting that on the chat. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Absolutely. Bye. Thank you.